Welcome to the channel. My name is Ilya, and I know you're probably here because you want to travel to Bali, Indonesia with your family. You might have a baby, a toddler, or kids at all ages, but you don't know where to start to find the information necessary for your trip. I recently traveled there with my wife and my 1-year-old, and I found it pretty difficult before the trip to actually find the information necessary to prepare for the trip. So this is your top to bottom guide of traveling to Bali, Indonesia with your kid. Or kids. My wife's son and I traveled there for a 10-night vacation in October of 2023. We did have my wife's parents join us for the first half of the holiday, which is definitely a bonus when it comes to juggling the little one, but not completely necessary, and I'll explain why later in this video. We will cover a range of topics and also address a lot of the concerns you probably have about Bali. And to make it easier for you guys, I've labeled the tabs at the bottom of this video if you want to find a specific part, because perhaps you only want to find out about the travel, accommodation, or whatever it might be. Let's start with the first part of everybody's trip, getting to your destination. I'm not going to bore you with the tips for the plane, as I think there are a range of ways to keep your kid behaved and entertained. Things like snacks, an iPad, certain toys, and some drawings will go a long way. We flew with Jetstar from Melbourne, which was almost a 6-hour trip, and we found our son to be pretty good throughout the whole flight. And regardless of your scenario, you're going to get there either way. The more important thing you can do is prepare for your flight and also for after it. The second you step off the plane, you're bound to feel the heat and humidity, so I highly recommend bringing a summer change of clothes in your carry-on to change into before you land, particularly for the kids. Denpasar International Airport is pretty straightforward, but there is a visa and customs checkpoint you'll need to get through. The visa process is very simple. You meet the first checkpoint, pay for the visa, which costs around 50 Australian dollars, and you can pay by card or cash. However, this tip is going to save you a lot of time at the customs checkpoint. There is a customs declaration form you'll need to complete on your phone, but the internet at the airport is so inconsistent, and I saw way too many people glued to their phones trying to sort this out. The good thing is, you can actually do this on your phone the day before you even arrive. Complete the form, save the QR code to your photos, and then you can go straight past all the people and into the customs clearance line. You'll save a ton of time, and I've linked the form down below for you guys so you can have it handy. Or just search for Bali declaration form and it'll be the first link on Google. After this checkpoint is where things can get a little crazy. So if you plan to get an Indonesian SIM card, I recommend doing this first before you leave the airport. It'll give you immediate access to the internet, and it only takes about 5 to 10 minutes as they fast track the process for you. The next thing will be the travel from the airport to your resort. I would suggest having a pre-planned driver, whether it be through your hotel service or just an airport transport service you can book online, because the taxis can be somewhat of an overwhelming experience. We didn't organize this and learned the hard way, which really isn't a difficult process to find a driver, as there are hundreds of people asking for your business, but because we were tired from the travel and the heat, we didn't even bother to negotiate on price and just went with the first driver we approached. This was definitely the most expensive ride for the whole trip, as we were fast to learn about the costs of taxis. With that being said, there is a few things to note about traveling within Bali. Most of you watching would most likely be used to strapping your kids into their baby seat back home. Bali is far more relaxed when it comes to this. Unless you plan on bringing a baby seat yourself, you should expect to just be holding your child whenever you get into a taxi. Plus, I don't think you'll find it all that fun carrying a baby seat around along with all the luggage and your kids. Obviously, it comes down to your preference, but maybe this will put your mind at ease. Driving in Bali at first seems extremely chaotic. Bikes everywhere, lack of signals, barely any recognition of lanes, ignorance for the lines on the road. These things will probably be a bit of a culture shock, but that is their way of driving. And truthfully, they have a very good understanding of it. And for some reason, it just works. Very rarely will you ever see any road rage, people driving in a crazy manner, speeding, or anything reckless really. It's surprisingly a very safe place for drivers, in particular for people within vehicles. Now, as for the people on scooters, you will be quick to notice that there are babies and kids driving on scooters with their mums and dads, often without a helmet. It's pretty crazy to see, but you understand it once you discover more about their way of life, because one of the biggest downfalls of Bali are the roads and the traffic. Certain areas are far more densely populated and often don't have the road infrastructure to keep up with it. An example of this would be Seminyak or Caangu, which I'll talk more about later in this video. Our first stay happened to be in Nusa Dua. Again, we will talk more about this, but I first wanted to address that it's a good idea to ask your driver to stop over at a mini mart and a currency exchange on the way so you can stock up on some drinks, snacks, and get some local currency in your hands. It's only important because within the Nusa Dua resort area, you're not really going to have any mini marts within walking distance. So it's just easier to get them on the way. And with the currency exchange, it brings me to a frequently asked question. Should you bring cash or do they take cards everywhere? Simple answer, cash is king in Bali. You will need to use your card for resort deposits and sometimes even payments, but we brought Australian dollars with us and exchanged money as we went along. Money exchanges will drastically change your price from your hotel exchange to the exchanges you find on the side of the road, and you can use your card in a lot of places, but more often than not, the FBOS machines are not working, or they simply just take cash. Nice restaurants, bars, and hotels will be the main places where a card will always work. This will heavily depend on your own scenario, but my suggestion would be to take more than half of what you project to spend in cash. Now, there is a lot of talk about where to stay and what things you should do, but I first wanted to touch on the question that concerns all parents. I did just say it was pretty normal to see kids and babies on scooters, but is it a travel option for you? I myself didn't intend to rent a bike because I never thought I'd take my son on it, but my wife and I had a day to ourselves where we rented the bike to travel around. I found that I was driving with extreme caution and patience, so we really felt comfortable on the roads. By the end of the day, we decided to try and see how my son would act on it with us, and he was extremely well behaved, so we had more confidence to use this means of transport throughout the trip. Plus, we only had one child to watch. If we had a second, the bike option would certainly not be on the table. And when it comes to your decision as to whether you choose to rent a scooter or not, it's totally dependent on your confidence in driving and your comfortability in the Indonesian streets. I think it would also make a difference with the behavior of your kid. But again, it's a case-by-case scenario, and don't validate my scenario as your own. The most important thing is the safety of your family. If you do choose to rent a scooter though, it'll not only save you time and make getting around far easier, but it's also extremely cheap. We had a delivery and pickup service from our hotel, which costs around $30 a day, and I'm 100% sure you can find it for a lot cheaper. Plus, $3 to $4 worth of petrol will generally get you through the whole day of travel, in most cases. Also, the petrol stations are not so typical because you often buy it by the bottle on the side of the road or just fill it up at one of these funny looking things. They do have normal petrol stations, but these things are everywhere and it's so much easier to fill up this way. Our scooter experience in Bali had no scares or close call incidents, and I felt extremely comfortable traveling through the streets as a family. Anyways, enough about the scooter, even though we loved it. Let's talk about accommodation and areas to stay. There are a lot of ways to tackle Bali, and I think the most prominent tourist areas would be Nusa Dua, Ubud, Seminyak, Caangu, and probably Uluwatu. We stayed in Nusa Dua for the first 7 days of our trip at the Sofitel and at a private villa in Caangu for the last 3 nights. Let's start off with Nusa Dua. The Sofitel is located along this long stretch of beachfront resorts. It's within a gated community where everyone has to pass through a security checkpoint on their way in and out. It's extremely safe, clean, beautiful, and overall one of the most family-friendly areas you can stay. The Sofitel is also a stunning resort itself. The moment you check in, you are greeted by friendly staff with drinks, bag carriers, and the check-in was also pretty seamless. The room we stayed in was extremely spacious and gives you the option for a kid's bed if you don't co-sleep. Our son sleeps with us in our bed without issues, so this was easy for us. We had a large bathroom with a separate toilet, bathtub, and shower, and the room was cleaned twice daily. Service was always exceptional, and overall, we had a pleasant experience with our room. The Sofitel breakfast featured one of the best buffets I've ever tried, with so many options to choose from. It featured things like the juice bar, where you can choose what ingredients you wanted for your freshly squeezed drink, an egg station to order eggs however you liked, pancakes and waffles, mixed cuisines, freshly cooked noodle bar, barista-made coffee, desserts, and so much more. It even featured a play area so you can send the little one in to be entertained whilst you eat. Safe to say breakfast was a good part of the day. And since we're on the subject of breakfast, let's cover the lunch and dinner spots in the area. There's a restaurant in the Sofitel that is open for lunch and dinner, and you can also eat at that same breakfast place as another option, which is a similar style of buffet dinner, but there are a number of restaurants along the beachfront that are definitely worthy of a mention. Something really important to note is that most people coming to Bali expect to be paying a few dollars to eat a feast. Unfortunately, in the resorts, it's nothing like that. It's actually pretty close to the prices we have back home. The cocktails, food, and drinks are on average just a few dollars cheaper. So whenever you eat or drink in a resort, you should expect to be paying a premium. Of course, if you decide to step outside, you'll definitely find a lot cheaper, and there are a lot of things you can take advantage of. But before I talk about that, let's talk about the amenities in the Sofitel. The pool area was awesome and had the kids section with the slide that the kids absolutely loved. There was also a daycare option, and this is something I wanted to talk more about as I know it's something I will consider for my next holiday here. Childcare is always somewhat worrying when it comes to international services, but I saw countless amounts of people hire full-time nannies to follow them around and assist them with their kids. I'm not sure of the cost of this service, but I know it's definitely something I'll be using in the future because it was obvious to me that these women were the perfect examples of what someone working in childcare should represent. I noticed on countless amounts of occasions walking past the childcare that the carers were active and playing with the toddlers in such a positive manner without the knowledge that they were being watched. I think this gained a lot of my trust and made me want to capitalize on that service for the future. When you're on a holiday with kids, it can really be difficult to get that wind down time to relax when you need to provide constant entertainment and watch them 24/7. Whether it be putting your kid in the childcare for a couple hours or having a nanny that is around to help with everything, I think this would make a world of difference on your holiday. Another thing to note about the childcare at the Sofitel was that it had an almost 1-to-1 ratio between the kids and the carers. Plus, it was also extremely clean. I can't speak from personal experience, but these were my observations. After all, I had my in-laws carry the load for the first half of the holiday, so that's why we really didn't consider it on this trip. Now, there's a few questions that I know people will want an answer to, as I was asking the same things before I left. The first first being about the infamous Bali Belly. How easy is it to avoid with showers, tap water, restaurants, and swimming pools? Well, let's start with the showers and tap water. Obviously, you don't want to be drinking anything from the tap. And when it comes to the showering, you want to avoid drinking any of the water as best you can. Even when you're brushing your teeth, you want to be pouring filtered water from the bottle over your toothbrush to wash it. Do not be washing your toothbrush from the tap. Restaurants are also extremely safe because there is a new law in Bali that enforces restaurants to serve filtered tap water and ice. So you no longer have to be concerned about having ice in your drinks. And as for the swimming pools, almost all resort swimming pools will be heavily treated and chlorinated. So you should never have an issue about Bali Belly in a swimming pool. But when it does come to certain private villas, you should ask them if the pool has been filled up with fresh water. If it's come straight out of the tap and it's not treated, yes, you should be concerned about Bali Belly from your pool. But that would be the only case. Another major concern that I'll quickly address is the theft and safety. After speaking to a number of people and also from my personal experience, it never seemed like someone was going to steal from me. Of course, they'll take advantage of tourist pricing, but stealing and theft was never a concern. I think they place way too much value in what tourism does for their economy, especially after COVID. As for feeling safe, I never felt like I was at any threat from anyone. Everyone was extremely friendly and we had a pleasant experience with every person we interacted with. So overall, I think Bali is extremely safe and I don't think you have to be concerned about being stolen from. Take that with a grain of salt and still be cautious as you would on any international trip. Now let's touch on stepping outside of the gated area of Nusa Dua. As mentioned before, you'll find a lot of places you can take advantage of. For example, the currency exchanges. Inside of the resort, the rates will be terrible, but outside of the resort, they'll be offering way better rates. Also, if you want to get a haircut from a local barber, you won't be paying more than $10 for a fade. And of course, being in Bali, you will want to be getting some massages. In the resort, you'll be pretty much paying the same price back home, but outside of the resort you can get around 5 massages for the same price. Expect hourly rates to be between 10 and 20 Australian dollars. You can also find some little stores to get great deals on clothes, souvenirs, and other things, but I would not recommend Nusa Dua for that type of shopping. I'll talk more about that later in this video. But overall, Nusa Dua is a great experience for families, and I think if you plan to travel to Bali, this will be the most relaxing and stress-free part of the trip. Although, it definitely won't be the cheapest part of it. Now let's talk about activities. If you want to have the experiences like riding an elephant, visiting the monkey forest, or going to a waterfall, most of those cool things to do are in Ubud. We didn't stay in Ubud, but we instead hired a driver for the day to take us everywhere, and he only charged us $80 for the entire day. The first activity we had for the day was the elephant park. Once we arrived to the elephant forest, we also noticed that the entry price and activity fees were pretty high. You do have two different options that you can do. One is riding the elephant and the other is bathing with the elephant. The experience was awesome because he ended up taking us within the water anyways. We didn't get wet, but we kind of still had that same experience. And if you're grossed out by elephant poo, I would not recommend doing the bathing experience because you'll definitely be swimming with a few floaters. You'll also get plenty of opportunity to take some photos and videos with the elephants. One thing you should have is some small notes to tip the people when they're helping you with videos and stuff. The next activity that we went to was the rice fields. I would definitely say this is not a toddler friendly place to go. It's beautiful and it's really nice to see, but it's extremely steep, there's huge steps, and there's also cliffs. Our little one actually slept when we got there, so that was good for us. And my wife and I got to do the giant swing, which if I'm honest, it wasn't all that fun or incredible of an experience, but the photos and videos were pretty cool. It's also not that steep in price, so it's pretty worth doing it. Next, we went and visited the monkey forest. It's a pretty cool experience getting up close and personal with the monkeys, but you definitely should approach with caution. Our driver happened to warn us about a whole bunch of things before we went, so we were aware about these few things that you should note. You shouldn't be bringing any food with you, you should hold tight onto your cameras or have a strap, and definitely don't try and touch the monkeys. We did a quick lap of the forest, which actually isn't a large lap, but it's a pretty cool experience overall. And the last part of the day, we went to the Ubud waterfall, which was incredible. There is a small entry fee into the park, but there are so many incredible photo and video spots here. And you should also be prepared to do some exercise because you have to climb pretty far down and all the way back up. And I had to power it through whilst carrying my toddler. We ended up banging out those 4 activities all on the same day, and it definitely took the whole day. Now this will be specific to your scenario, but if you manage to drop your kid off for the day and have free time for you and your wife, I couldn't recommend this anymore. We left my son with my in-laws for the day and took a scooter to Uluwatu. The place we intended to visit was El Cabron. The scenery, the music, the food, everything was well above my expectation, and just an incredible experience. El Cabron was definitely one of the best parts of my trip. There is a price per head, which is actually a minimum spend, which you end up spending through drinks and food anyways, but you should expect to be spending around $100 per head. Now let's take it to the other side of Bali where we stayed for the last 3 nights in Caangu. The villa we stayed in was in the Blossom Eco Luxe Villas that was in a perfect location very close to the beach. It featured our own private pool, sunbed, living room and kitchen, downstairs bathroom with a bathtub and a huge shower, an upstairs bedroom with a balcony sunbed, and an additional toilet up top. Honestly, this villa was a little bit more on the pricey side, but but it was incredible. I would highly recommend it if you wanted to stay here. The location itself is almost perfect too. Plus, it also featured an incredible breakfast that was brought to your room every morning. And they also included an afternoon tea every day. Caangu is located a couple suburbs away from Seminyak, which is the most commonly known tourist spot in Bali. Seminyak is really nice, but Caangu is the new up-and-coming area that's become extremely popular this past year. There's tons of restaurants, bars, and so many things to do, but I will add that it's not the most kid-friendly place. For example, the roads and pathways are definitely not designed for a pram. One thing that I absolutely love about Caangu, Seminyak, and areas like this are the shops. This is where you really want to take advantage of shopping for clothes, fake watches, bags, and all that kind of stuff, and you definitely want to be aware of their negotiation system. Some places definitely do have fixed prices, and they'll make that clear to you from the start, but more often than not, you'll be able to negotiate prices way lower than what they quote you. It's also a bit of a fun cultural experience, and you find that you'll learn the pricing better as you go along. Also, whilst we're on the subject of clothing, one thing I highly recommend before you end up leaving your trip is taking all of your dirty clothes to a laundromat where they will clean, fold, and return your clothes in such good condition for a very cheap price. It's way better than returning home with a whole bunch of dirty clothes that you have to wash. Overall, our Caangu experience was really nice. Now, I know I've probably forgotten a few things or haven't addressed all your concerns, so if you have any questions for me, drop it in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them. Also, if you found this video helpful, make sure you drop the video a like, and it's probably worthy to note that this is my first travel guide or first travel video in general, so if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure you let me know in the comments, subscribe, and hit that like button. It'll definitely motivate me to do it further. I definitely love traveling, so I would love to dedicate a travel section to this channel. Anyways, that's all from me. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you in the next one.